My name is Sloan Sterling, 32 years old. I work in corporate finance, which is ironic because my own financial security was destroyed, not by strangers or market crash, but by the two people who were supposed to love me unconditionally, my parents. I opened my laptop one Tuesday morning in my Chicago apartment ready to start the workday, when a security alert from my bank popped up. Transaction alert: $200,000 charged at a private resort in the Maldives. Black card. My heart didn't race. It simply froze. I had my card right here in my desk drawer. I pulled it out, the heavy obsidian card that represented years of grueling work, and it was still there. That's when I received a text message from my mother. "Sloan, we needed this. Brianna deserved it. You wouldn't have understood." It wasn't my personal card they stole. It was the corporate black card tied to the private investment firm where I am a managing director, an account with nearly limitless power and strict security protocols. I saw an Instagram story from my sister Brianna Sterling sipping a turquoise cocktail with a caption, "Paradise found thanks, Mom and Dad." This $200,000 trip is everything. $200,000. My sister, my parents, my identity. I closed the laptop, walked to the kitchen, and poured myself a glass of cold water. I took a slow sip, then picked up my business cell phone and dialed the number for Julian Foster, my corporate attorney. "Julian, I need to report corporate fraud and identity theft." I said, my voice eerily calm. "Before we dive into the wreckage of my family's past and how I got here, tell me in the comments, what time are you watching this and what city are you in? I want to know how far this story has traveled." If you think you've heard stories about family betrayal over money, stay tuned. Because what happens when your family doesn't just ask for a loan, they steal your entire identity to fund a six-figure luxury trip for your sister. To understand why I reacted with legal paperwork instead of tears, we have to rewind to the years I spent being the invisible daughter in a three-person spotlight. I was born into the Sterling family as the second child, but quickly assigned the role of the outcast, the one with no future, while Brianna was their golden child. From the moment I could form memories, every resource, every kind word, and every soft glance was directed exclusively at my sister. My childhood was defined by hand-me-downs and whispered critiques about my lack of social grace. My 10th birthday party was canceled because Brianna, who was 12, insisted her broken arm sustained while carelessly climbing a tree required an expensive weekend trip to a specialized clinic, a trip funded by my birthday savings. When I cried, my mother Sharon just patted my shoulder with a forced, brittle touch and said, "Sloan, you must understand Brianna is more sensitive than you. Her happiness takes priority." That became the foundational truth of my life. My needs were negligible, and my sister's demands were family law. Brianna, of course, learned quickly to exploit this imbalance. She was adept at fabricating tales of my malice or jealousy. In high school, when she plagiarized a history paper, she managed to convince our father, Walter Sterling, that I had deliberately sabotaged her computer, leading to me being grounded for a month, while Brianna received praise for her hard work under pressure after rewriting the paper with Dad's extensive help. I often heard my mother tell my father, "Sloan will be fine, she's resilient. Brianna needs our support because she's delicate and destined for greatness." The continuous subtle poisoning of their minds meant that by the time I was 16, I was viewed less as a daughter and more as a problem that had yet to resolve itself. The emotional cruelty extended even to our extended family, especially my Aunt Judith Sterling, my mother's sister. Judith, a socialite focused on appearance, once publicly derided my college choices at a holiday dinner, suggesting that Brianna's acceptance into a prestigious, though expensive and unnecessary art program was the only thing giving the Sterling name any intellectual weight. "Sloan," Judith had announced loud enough for the entire table to hear, "you're practical, which is boring. Brianna is the true artist." The final blow came when I earned a scholarship to a state university known for its excellent finance program. My parents were not proud, they were disappointed. Walter sneered, "A state school fine, at least we won't have to spend a cent on your tuition. That money can go towards Brianna's living expenses when she moves to the city." I never got a "good job, we're proud of you," or even a simple hug of encouragement. I received a dismissal. That moment cemented my resolve I would leave and build a fortress of success so impenetrable that their contempt could never touch me again. But even then, I didn't realize that my financial success would simply be viewed as a family tool, not an individual achievement setting the stage for the massive betrayal that was to come years later. My mother's casual dismissal of my future, telling me I had no true purpose compared to my sister, created an emotional chasm I knew could never be bridged. The day I moved out at 18, Sharon gave me a worn-out copy of a financial self-help book saying, "Maybe this will finally make you useful." It was a devastating insult that fueled every single dollar I earned thereafter. At 25, I made the decision to completely sever financial ties with my family, knowing their contempt had to be replaced by my own self-worth. I dove into the financial world, relentlessly pursuing success. That intense focus on building something tangible, something mine, led me to a managing director position at a respected investment firm. My success wasn't just a career, it was my vindication. The true symbol of this achievement wasn't my salary or my title, but the corporate black card the firm issued to me. This wasn't some consumer credit card. It was an obsidian-colored instrument of corporate spending linked to the firm's main accounts, providing virtually unlimited purchasing power under the strictest security and fraud protection protocols imaginable. This card was a testament to my competence, my loyalty to the corporation, and my ability to handle immense responsibility. It was the antithesis of everything my parents had ever predicted for me. My personal life was also finally anchored by someone who saw me, not my utility, Elias Thorne, my boyfriend. Elias, a software engineer, understood the dynamics of my family without needing to hear the full painful history. He saw the scars of their contempt and the sheer effort I poured into my career. He often told me, "Sloan, the only person who deserves to spend your money is you." The irony was that while my parents had once dismissed my career path as boring, they now only saw the shimmering, untouchable surface of my wealth. They didn't respect the effort, they only eyed the access. They genuinely believed that my success was somehow theirs by extension, a divine correction that meant the wealth belonged to the Sterling name, not to Sloan, the individual they had scorned for 2 decades. The fact that the black card was not even my personal asset but a corporate tool was a subtlety they completely missed. They only saw the high limit and the exclusivity. They began trying to test the boundaries. They would send casual probing texts asking about the perks of my job or what kind of personal banking services I used. I kept my distance, politely deflecting every inquiry, establishing a firm, albeit polite, financial wall. I installed a small professional-grade safe in my home office to store all sensitive documents and the black card when I wasn't traveling. It was a physical manifestation of the boundary I had struggled to establish emotionally for years. One late night when my parents were visiting Chicago for a brief event, a rare occurrence, I walked into my office to retrieve a file and saw my father Walter standing suspiciously close to the safe, feigning interest in a potted plant. His eyes were wide with a barely concealed nervousness. When he realized I saw him, he quickly moved away, muttering something about looking for a pen. That incident was a cold splash of reality. I knew then that they weren't just curious about my wealth. They were actively looking for a way in. His attempt clumsy as it was confirmed that my family viewed my financial instruments as property. They had a right to access, reinforcing that the contempt they felt for me did not extend to the money I controlled. I silently changed the safe's combination that night. 2 years ago, the precarious financial facade my parents maintained finally crumbled after Walter made a catastrophic investment mistake, sinking a significant portion of their retirement savings into a dubious real estate venture. Suddenly, the phone calls shifted from being dismissive of my achievements to desperately seeking my aid. Brianna predictably offered nothing, maintaining her extravagant lifestyle while the walls closed in on my parents. Despite my deep-seated resentment, I offered limited structured assistance, utility bill payments, weekly transfers for groceries, nothing major, always documented as a gift, with no expectation of repayment. My kindness, however, was immediately interpreted as weakness. When I set a hard limit on the monthly support, my mother Sharon deployed the family honor weapon. She enlisted my Aunt Judith, who lived nearby and maintained a strong social standing, to intervene. Judith, always focused on appearances, called me Sloan. She began, her voice dripping with artificial empathy. Your parents need more than groceries. They need to maintain their standing in the community. Their dignity is crumbling. You are the successful one now. You have an obligation to save their name. Judith wasn't seeking resolution, she was demanding sacrifice. She strongly implied that I should give them a large sum to pay off their real estate debts, suggesting that my lack of financial generosity was directly responsible for the Sterling family's imminent disgrace. It was the same old manipulative pattern, only now endorsed by another family member. I firmly refused to touch the real estate debt, citing the advice of my own financial advisor, but I agreed to loan them a small, low-limit credit card under my personal name for emergencies, only signing a simple notarized agreement with them detailing the usage restrictions. It was a calculated risk, a small olive branch that was meant to satisfy their immediate need without giving them access to my actual power. I was transparent. Misuse of this personal card would result in its immediate cancellation. I stressed that this gesture was contingent on their respect for this strict boundary. This is the line, Mom, I had told Sharon during the handoff. Sharon accepted the card with a cold, entitled nod, never once expressing gratitude. I felt a familiar cold dread, knowing this boundary was already on thin ice. Weeks later, I was cleaning out some old tax paperwork in my office when I noticed a faint, oily residue on an old file folder. It was a file I had mistakenly put inside the safe before changing the combination of file that contained a photocopy of the security documentation for the corporate black card, including its unique security codes, though not the PIN. I realized with chilling clarity that my father Walter hadn't been looking for a pen that night. He had been attempting to lift an impression or information from the folder. The residue suggested a deliberate attempt to copy key data. The low-limit card was just a distraction, a way to keep me placated, while they strategized how to breach the real fortress. The true financial attack was always intended for the black card. 3 weeks before the fraud alert hit my phone, I had departed for a mandatory corporate conference in Zurich, leaving my office secured, but my guard slightly down, believing the safe and the frequent combination changes were enough. They were waiting for this specific moment. I was gone for 10 days, and that was all the time they needed. The full details of the betrayal emerged later in the fraud reports, but the emotional hit came first. My father Walter, using the information he had illegally copied, managed to activate a secondary virtual card linked to my primary black card account by impersonating me during a phone call with a junior bank representative, citing an urgent business need while I was traveling in an area with limited network access. The genius of the black card, its anonymity and vast purchasing power, became their weapon. The $200,000 was not spent slowly. It was a rapid 2-day blitzkrieg of luxury, spending $60,000 for private first-class round-trip airfare to the Maldives, $90,000 for a 2-week stay in an exclusive overwater villa, the type that required a security clearance, and $50,000 designated for experiences and gifts, which included designer clothing and a private yacht charter for Brianna. My sister Brianna was fully aware of the fund's source and the illicit nature of the spending. She was the eager participant. While the charges were still pending on the corporate system, I saw the social media posts. Brianna uploaded a selfie with her champagne flute wearing a hat that partially obscured the face of my mother Sharon in the background. The geotag was crystal clear, Soneva Johnny Maldives. My blood ran cold, but I didn't call the police or the bank immediately. I called my parents. Sharon answered, her voice tight with forced celebration. "Oh, Sloan, are you calling from Zurich? Don't worry about the card. It's just $200,000, darling. Brianna is having the time of her life. She deserves this reset after her latest heartbreak." When I demanded to know how they dared to commit felony fraud against the corporation, my father Walter took the phone, his voice defensive. "We are your family, Sloan. We don't steal from family. We just take what's necessary. You owe us this. You have so much, and Brianna has so little." We weren't stealing. We were balancing the scales. He then went on to reveal the full extent of their criminal act. "We used your name, your voice, even your old signature samples. It was all legal, just a small bit of creative accounting." His sheer, unrepentant audacity shattered the last fragile piece of my loyalty. The money was irrelevant. They had stolen my name, my reputation, and my corporate trust. I hung up the phone. Their brazen admission that they were simply balancing the scales was the final piece of evidence I needed. They were not desperate people making a mistake. They were entitled predators who believed they had a right to my effort, my identity, and my entire future. The feeling of being physically violated by their entitlement was overwhelming, but I refused to let the emotional damage paralyze me. I walked out onto the cold, snowy balcony of my hotel room in Zurich. I needed a touchstone, and that was Elias Thorne. I didn't call him to cry. I called him to solidify my resolve. "They did it, Elias." I stated, my voice flat. $200,000, the black card. They admitted everything. Elias didn't offer platitudes. He offered clarity. "Okay, Sloan. Take a deep breath. Focus on the facts, not the feelings. What does Julian Foster need right now?" His quiet, steady strength was the perfect antidote to my internal storm of rage and betrayal. He reminded me that the corporate black card was not mine to forgive. It was the corporation's asset, and the decision was already out of my hands. I immediately dialed Julian Foster, my corporate attorney. Julian, having received the initial fraud alert hours earlier, was already prepared. "Sloan, the corporate security protocol is automatically activated. The moment a six-figure non-essential charge hits that card from an IP address not associated with your usual business travel, it triggers a federal-level alert. This isn't just family theft, it's corporate financial felony." I confirmed every detail: the amount, the location, the fact that my parents had knowingly impersonated me to the bank. Julian immediately filed the official fraud packet with the issuing bank and the corporate security division, emphasizing that the perpetrators were family members who had used sophisticated identity theft techniques. The response was swift and absolute. Within the hour, the bank not only froze the $200,000 charges, but also initiated an internal review of all accounts associated with my parents, Sharon and Walter Sterling. The silence from the Maldives trip was broken by a frantic cascade of emails and voicemails from my parents. "Sloan, what have you done? The card is blocked. Brianna is stuck at the resort. The management is threatening to call the police." They were not apologetic. They were furious at the inconvenience. Sharon texted, "You wouldn't dare ruin your sister's dream over something as trivial as money. We are your blood family protects family." I typed back a single sentence, my fingers trembling slightly. "Family protects trust. You charged your betrayal." The most profound moment came when Julian called back to inform me that the issuing bank, owned by the massive financial corporation, had traced the IP addresses and device fingerprints used for the virtual card activation. The evidence was undeniable. Julian's voice was grim, yet satisfied. Sloan, the evidence is ironclad. They didn't just steal from you, they stole from the corporation. This is going to be handled by our white-collar crime division now. That phone call confirmed the game had shifted irrevocably. My battle was no longer a personal feud, it was a federal case backed by $1 billion entity. The next 2 weeks unfolded with the chilling inevitability of a legal siege. My corporate legal team, led by Julian Foster, moved with surgical precision. The corporation's insurance firm, which was obligated to cover the fraudulent charges, officially filed a claim against Sharon and Walter Sterling for full restitution. This meant that my parents were not just fighting their daughter, they were fighting a multi-billion-dollar financial giant demanding the full $200,000 back plus legal fees. The panic from the Maldives turned into outright terror when my parents and sister were forced to cut their vacation short and deal with the immediate financial ramifications. All their personal bank accounts, including their joint savings, were temporarily frozen pending the fraud investigation, a direct result of the Black Card investigation. My mother, Sharon, abandoned the luxury resort and flew home in economy class, leaving Brianna to fend for herself briefly. The calls and texts intensified, evolving from angry demands to pathetic manipulative pleas. Walter left a voicemail late one night. "Sloan, we are ruined. We will lose the house. You can stop this. Tell them it was a misunderstanding. Please, for your mother's health." He was using the ultimate manipulation, his wife's supposed frail health, as a shield, but I remembered the cold contempt in their voices when they first confirmed the theft. I stood firm, following Julian's advice. You must not communicate with them directly. Let the legal process speak. The most unexpected yet deeply painful turn came from my Aunt Judith. She called me not to defend her sister Sharon, but to issue a self-serving ultimatum. "Sloan, I have worked too hard on my social standing to be associated with this kind of public disgrace," she stated coldly. "I am publicly distancing myself from Walter and Sharon. They're making a mockery of the Sterling name. I expect you to do the same. Do not mention my name in connection with any of this mess." Her concern was solely for her own reputation. When I asked if she would help my parents with a short-term loan to avoid losing their home, the line went silent before she coldly responded, "They made their bed. I can't risk my assets." Her calculated, self-preserving betrayal hurt deeply, confirming that the entire extended family valued appearance and money over genuine connection. I realized the family structure had always been transactional, and now that my transaction was legal consequences, everyone scattered. I refused to let their fear or their manufactured guilt influence the truth. The court date was set, and I knew I had to testify. The courthouse in Chicago was a cavern of cold marble and echoing judgment. I sat across the aisle from Sharon and Walter, flanked by their public defender. Brianna was not present. She was allegedly still dealing with the fallout of the abrupt trip cancellation. My parents looked utterly defeated, their faces stripped of the usual arrogance replaced by fear and bitterness. When the prosecutor asked me to testify, I stood up not with rage, but with the quiet clarity I had gained from Elias's unwavering support. "I am not here for revenge," I stated to the judge. "I am here to record the truth. My parents did not just steal money, they stole my identity, my corporate trust, and they wore my good name like a mask to purchase a luxury vacation for their favorite child." I detailed the historical bias, the years of contempt, and the final brazen act of entitlement. I ended with a firm, simple truth. They taught me that when family violates your core boundaries, they forfeit the right to be called family. The ruling came swiftly. Sharon and Walter Sterling were ordered to pay full restitution of $200,000 to the corporation's insurance provider. Their assets would be monitored, and their credit ratings were decimated, legally cornering them financially. They were facing financial ruin not from me, but from the unstoppable machinery of corporate law. Outside the courtroom, as I walked past them, Walter whispered bitterly, "Are you happy now, Sloan? You destroyed us." I stopped, turned, and looked at them one last time. "No," I said, meeting their gaze without flinching. "I am whole now. I am free from you." I walked away without looking back, leaving the wreckage of their choices behind. That night, I celebrated my freedom quietly with Elias. He didn't focus on the verdict but on the future. He gifted me a small personalized journal labeled Boundaries. It wasn't about the money, it was about the peace I had finally achieved. The following week, I systematically implemented the final permanent boundaries. I blocked all their numbers, deleted my Aunt Judith's contact, and moved to a new apartment downtown, ensuring no physical link remained. I was done being the family ATM and the scapegoat. Closure didn't come from the judge's gavel. It came from those final, quiet, deliberate choices. This newfound freedom was worth exponentially more than the $200,000 they tried to steal. The most profound realization I gained from this brutal experience is that unconditional love does not come with a transaction fee, and family is not a magical word that excuses criminal behavior. When kindness becomes an expectation and boundaries are treated as invitations to trespass, the only way to save yourself is through definitive separation. You have the right to protect your effort, your reputation, and your peace, even if it means losing the people who share your blood. The moment I chose legal protection over emotional obligation, I reclaimed my life. I hope my story serves as a painful reminder sometimes closing the ledger is the only path to healing. Thank you for listening to my story until the very end. If you have ever been treated with similar contempt or been financially exploited by those you trusted, please share your thoughts in the comments below. Let me know what boundary you had to draw to reclaim your peace. Don't forget to like this video and subscribe to my channel so we can continue to share stories of courage and recovery.